Thank you. As you've heard, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Lunga Ncala Ndlovu. I got a double barrel surname because, in part, it speaks to the essence of why we are here, as we are dealing with mental illness, abuse, gender-based violence, substance abuse. Mine stems from my lack of identity. So having an absent father in my life created a huge gap in my life. And this is why, as you heard in the intro, since 2015, after my divorce and after my life had taken a turn with substance abuse, drug addiction, mental illness, I've got a truckloads of problems. But I thank God by the grace that I was able to survive that. In actual fact, before I even get into my presentation, please indulge me. Maybe all rise just for a quick second. And as we rise, don't worry, I'm not taking you to church. I wish I was, but I'm not. Because I like to respect everybody who've got their own God of their own understanding. Before I speak, I would like to do something that was done by my predecessors in rehabilitation centers. This was done in one of the rehabs I went to, and since then it is stuck with me, and I keep it with me. So we can just, because of social distancing, we won't hold our hands, because normally we hold hands, but we won't do that. But perhaps maybe you can hold your own hand, symbolize maybe holding someone else. And we're going to take a moment of silence and bow our heads, and just tap into your own God of understanding, your own spiritual power. If you take a moment of silence to acknowledge those who have gone through drug addiction, and for those who have gone through mental illness, and for those who have gone through various social ills and have lost their lives. Just take a moment of silence. And as we stand this way, we stand together to remind ourselves that we stand together and we stand alone if we choose to. But if we choose to stand together, we can overcome gender-based violence, we can overcome this social ills of drug addiction, GBV, and other issues that affect us. We take another moment of silence to pause for those who have not yet picked up a drug but may pick it up today. And for those who have not gone through the horrors of abuse and may experience it today, we take a moment of silence to acknowledge them, and we pray for them that they may be able to overcome. We also take a moment of silence now to acknowledge our loved ones, our family members, and all those we've put through or have gone through these social ills and illnesses. And before we sit, we also acknowledge and we pray for those who are in recovery centers and places of wellness, that they may get the help that they need. And we pray for anyone else to avoid such a terrible illness that has cost us many lives as a country, as a nation, and as the world all over. And finally, for those who battle illnesses that they cannot speak about, and for those illnesses that they cannot point a finger to and say, it hurts over here, we pray that they may find help. Thank you. Besides my own personal experience, which I would have loved to have shared with you guys, as you've heard in the intro, that I've cycled almost 10,000 kilometers on my bicycle to raise awareness for gender-based violence and substance abuse. Actual fact, I thought that was the idea. I thought that was what I was doing. In actual fact, I was healing myself. I was trying to find my own solutions, my own ways to solve this issue that I could not speak about, nor did I have a platform to even speak about, being a man. Worst of all, being a traditional man or being an African man, a Zulu man, into the Kalanga Pagat.
Yeah.
I had to forge my own path, my own way, and that led me on a path to the wilderness. And I decided to cycle the outskirts of South Africa and Africa. To date, I've cycled across 4 African countries, Lesotho, Swaziland, Mozambique, and South Africa. In that month, I made history by being one of the first African men to do that. I always cycle on the 25th of November, the beginning of 16 days of activism, and I end on the 10th of December. But I decided to go further and cycle for an entire month, crossing the 4 borders I mentioned, totaling 3,000 kilometers, asking this very question: what happens after you step out of abuse? Who am I? This thing has defined me so many different directions, so many different ways that I've lost who I am. Which brings me to my first slide and to what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be jumping in between different things, so please try and follow me. If not, you can just raise your hand. I can just slow down a bit. I am a recovering drug addict myself. I'm a recovering GBV victim and perpetrator. I've gone 460. For me, it's been a road of vulnerability. In 2018, when I cycled across the 4 African countries to raise awareness for gender-based violence, I went and I'd done a photo shoot. It was a nude photo shoot. Why nudity? Why did I decide to go this way? Is because I was really trying to understand vulnerability in a more in-depth way, and trying to find how can arts and culture and creativity kind of help us navigate through this very complex situation we find ourselves in. And I looked into myself, finding myself being closed inside of my own self and not being able to live according to what I believe is where I should be. And as I continued moving on, one of the speakers mentioned that traumas build up in life. As things started piling up in life and I started getting kids, also other things started happening, I'm losing myself and things are getting put on me. So I decided to take off all that society has put on me, what a man is, or the gap that my father left me. I take that all off, all these things, and I posed for a nude shoot to show that vulnerability is not a weakness. It's not something you should fear as a man. And the only time you can start healing is when you embrace that vulnerability. And that took me on that journey of finding myself and finding other men out there who I can give them a platform and a stage. Which brings me to the topic of today, finding the link between substance abuse and gender-based violence. Let me take you on a story. That brightly dressed young man, I'm gonna call him Mfana Wami. The story of Mfana Wami. Mfana Wami is a term, if I can loosely translate it, my boy or my man. It's a term of endowment. Mfana Wami was born at Tegwini Mlazi, born to a single mom, 19-year-old woman, 19-year-old young, yellow-born woman who had inspirations of being a doctor. Being the firstborn at home, also she thought that she would grow up to be a great example to her father and to everyone else. But because she fell pregnant at the age of 19, tender age of 19, just after matric, and she passed very well, she was ashamed that she disappointed her father. She was ashamed she disappointed the community and everyone else, so she decided to hide the pregnancy, with the help of her mother, of course. They hid this pregnancy. I don't know what plan they had to hide the pregnancy, because it kind of shows over time. But, women are very resourceful. They found a way to hide it from Umkhulu, Ubaba. Time went on, obviously, but around November, before November, October, it's already showing that she's fully pregnant. The father finds out. Of course, disappointment that now she can no longer go on to school to become a medical doctor, but now she has to change her choices because she's got a package that is coming and is going to need some care. As she was sitting in the delivery room in 1984 in KZN, she held this young boy and she said a prayer of hope. Ukuthi one day kuzolunga. One day. And then she then ventured on to the life then now to alter and change things around. Now, Mfana Wami did not know any of these things. He just came into the world. It's beautiful things. People love him. Look at him in that picture too, with the lady who raised him. Bambiza Utomdala. Literally, that was her name, Utomdala, meaning Mutumohol, or an elderly person. She refused to be called by name, teaching this young man respect, teaching this young man dignity, teaching this young man principles of life he may need to grow up in and have. So as Mfanawam grew, he grew knowing that life is just beautiful. He was a sweet boy. He's very shy, but very helpful and very kind. And soon enough, as he grew up, he realized that Ubaba no Gogo are actually Ugogo. Ubaba no Mama are actually Ugogo no Mkhulu. And that Umama no Baba are Auntie and Umalume. This kind of confused him, as the mother put him to schools which can give him opportunity away from Elukshin. So he went to a good school, and he grew up from that way. Let me just jump in. Let me pause the story a little bit about Mfanawami for a second. Let's look at what is gender-based violence. As defined by the Oxford Dictionary, is violence that is directed at an individual based on his or her biological sex or gender identity. That's how the definition of the dictionary, Oxford Dictionary, defines gender-based violence. But we know that on the ground, we see things differently, or we define things differently. For Mfanawami, at a very young age, his definition of gender-based violence was that he is not enough. His definition of violence based on his biological identity was that he's not allowed to cry or be vulnerable about his void or lack of. Instead, he must toughen up, grow up, and not even mention it and keep on going, just like other kids do. Which brings me to the first, for one of the parts of various types of GBV, intimate partner violence. We see that a lot on TV. We see a lot of that growing up. Actual fact, Mfanawami grew up seeing a man speak and treat a woman however he may feel like, and that everyone found it to be okay. He never understood why is it that we keep on going on with life as normal when we see her crying, bleeding, wanting help. In actual fact, remember one story when Mfanawami was growing up, a young teenager, trying to go out with the boys, Mlazi. They organized a taxi to go to the beach. It was his first encounter with a girl. He's never really kind of encountered a girl. He's a very shy boy. All his friends know that when you hook up with a girl, you must hook up with a girl to get somewhere and get something. He just wanted to hang around with a pretty girl. As he was doing this, they hired a taxi, they're all in there, all the guys from Mlazi, all the way to the beach. He's busy conversing with this girl, asking her her name, star sign, all these little cute, quirky things that little kids are supposed to be doing at that age. Then one of his friends whispers to him and says, "Hey, why quit wasting time and just get busy with it?" As he's still trying to process this idea, another friend of his comes there and grabs this girl, slaps her across the face, and says to her, "When a young Joella, I'm saying that you're disrespecting me. Earlier on, I was speaking to you, making advances to you, letting you know that I like you. Now you're talking to this guy. What you doing talking to this softy, this young boy who speaks with a twang? He can't even speak proper Zulu." Immediately, this Mfanawami's young vision and idea of walking with this girl, Sunset, was then diminished in a violent act. And he kind of picked up in the back of his mind, oh, the only way to get girls is perhaps this way, because this guy finally got the night that he was looking for with this woman. Mfanawami went home alone by himself. With what I've touched on now, I think I've gone through physical violence and sexual violence as part of gender-based violence. That he felt that she owed him something because they spoke, and he was going to get it. This was way before GBV and way before other things came up, or we even understood La ngikhule khona mina i-cherry ibamba nge-3, bathi ibamba nge-3, ibamba nge-force. And then the psychological violence. This one is, I feel, this one here and the economic one and the structural and institutional violence are the ones that we oftentimes fail to kind of dive into because we cannot really find a definition or pinpoint it and say, there it is. It took me many years to even just speak about my own experiences. I started cycling for women. I started cycling for a shelter in Port Elizabeth to raise awareness for them and gather sanitary products for them to start their lives over again. When I worked at a community radio station, that is what I was punting, because I associated myself with them not being abused or not being able or allowed to be themselves. Oh, I'm supposed to press that. Structural and institutional violence. We go through a lot of that. I think I heard one of the speakers mentioning some of the social ills we face because they're driven by economics. That last one there, structural and institutional violence, we tend to shy away from it because we don't want to rattle the cage too much. We might just lose our job. In this last cycle that I've done from Johannesburg to Cape Town recently, I partnered up with Word in the Streets, nonprofit organization that focuses on helping young men and women rehabilitate themselves from drugs by taking them from the environment and putting them into a rehab. But not only just rehab, but help them to foster their lives after that. So I decided to partner up with the Word in the Street and cycle to Cape Town to raise awareness, to raise funds, so we can build ourselves a rehab we can run. I'll tell you a story why I want to build a rehab and why we want to build a wellness village where people can come and get the help they need to rebuild their lives. I'll touch on that towards the end of my presentation. The point I'm making here is when I was cycling and I came across the Escort. I think I was in Escort. That was day 5 or day 6 of my cycling. Escort was KZN. I'd already crossed 3 provinces by then. And I was stopped at one of the local police stations just to find out what are they doing for GBV and what can I do to give support and aid in this space, because I feel like men are not being given a platform to speak about what they go through. As much as, yes, there are perpetrators, but we need to learn how do we heal them so we can solve the issue, which is one of the programs I focus on in Right Abuse, nonprofit organization that I run, is his identity. So I ask, what do you guys, what happens here? The lady says to me, oh, our cases, people don't really report, especially women, don't report cases that much. Same thing I experienced even in the higher LSM regions in the Western Cape when I was cycling through there. They said that women don't come because they fear that the breadwinner is going to kick them out of home. That's why they can't report. Imagine how many men are out there quiet because they don't want to rattle the cage. If women too are now quiet and not speaking. And another person says, I don't want to say too much because of the work I work at. If I lose that job, I lose everything. I remember I said the example of a guy I met in rehab. I want to share a story of a guy in rehab, but I think I'll share this one rather. When after my stay, I took myself to a rehab stay about 3 years ago. I decided to get myself clean, where I hit my rock bottom. And through there, my 42-day stay at a rehab facility, I was able to get help. And after that, I started building my life again. Now, knowing everything that I used to do, I never used to look this good. Also, that's another thing. I never used to look this good. I never used to care too much about how I present myself. But going into that space gave me that. And the more the confidence built, the more that my spiritual bankruptcy ended. And I started filling myself up. I live by 3 principles: willingness, honesty, and the ability to be able to be flexible. Those are 3 principles I live by: honesty, willingness to do whatever it takes to stay clean. So I went to look for a job. I got a job in a financial institution. I have no business being in there. I'm a marketer by trade and a creative person. But I needed to get a job so I can feed my family and get the family that I had lost because drugs had taken that away from me. As I was going back to this job, things are working. I needed more coping. A case in point, when I opened up my speaking and I done the silence, moment of silence, is because I put myself in a state of congruency. I'm also a life coach. I've just learned how to master myself. So there's certain things I do and techniques I do to keep myself composed because I've got mental conditions too, because the drugs have done damage. So with this being in mind, I thought that 3 principles I live by: honesty and willingness. I spoke to my new employer. I was very open with them, even though with the advice of my support structure. I'm part of so many support teams, AA, NA, all these support teams you can think of. I'm part of all of this thing because mental awareness is important to me. So I tell my employer that this is who I am, this is what I've been through, this is the treatment I'm going through, this is how I'm managing my time and myself so that I can be an effective person, human being, and employee. Oh, goody, he's happy, everything goes well. I come through some tough situations, I go through my therapy and so on and so forth, and then I eventually take myself into a psych hospital because it became unbearable for me. I come back out of 21-day stay. A week after, just coming back, I'm already being pushed for deadlines and so on and so forth. I reply accordingly because yes, I'm working for a business. They've got bottom line to keep and I must do what needs to be done. As I'm doing the things I'm needing to do, how I'm being called in for a hearing, disciplinary hearing. I just came back from hospital. It's not even 2 weeks, but okay. I go into there, just the whole process. I'm being pushed out, essentially, because I mean, it's an FSP, but the bottom line, And what are they going to do with a man who's got issues like me? To them, I seemed crippled, like I'm going to slow the team down. But eventually I lost that. That is institutional violence. That's abuse. Even the things that were being stated in the meeting were things I had told him in confidence, but now it's being used against me. Lunga came to work drunk. I'm a recovering addict. I touch the stuff, I die. It goes to show that sometimes even institutions and places can be very harmful to us. There's also a healing that needs to take place in that space also. That's the kind of person I am. I go into a problem and find a solution in there too. But let's look at substance abuse quickly. Substance abuse is, in the Oxford Dictionary, is defined as a pattern of harmful use of any substance or for mood-altering purposes. Substances can include alcohol and other drugs, illegal or not, as well as some substance. You guys know this already, as I'm sure many speakers have touched on this. And another one, which is one that we tend to overlook because they're prescription medications. Every time you get a headache, you want to pop a grandpa or pop a pill. Every time you're stressed out or just to help you sleep. What happens is over time, you develop a habit. And over time, it's a normal thing that you normally do just to put yourself to sleep. My mother's a midwife. She works in a very high, stressful environment. She used to, before she would go to sleep, she'd drink a cup of Jacobs with a tot of something nice in there just to help her sleep. But over time, they became heavy for her system because she's aware. Then she was able to alter and change and say, no, this is not going to hurt me. Now, others don't have that. That's when it becomes abusive. Having a beer at the end of the day is okay, but when you start having more, that's the issue. It gets from there. Illegal drugs, we already know illegal drugs are illegal in what they do. But it's the other ones that we tend to overlook, or the frequency of the drinks. In actual fact, some of these things maybe don't apply to some of us. Maybe it's the intention you have in mind when you pick up a drink. That's what happens if you're not okay. If now the link between GBV and substance abuse is coming up now, and the next slide is here. I want to try and move quickly through these next couple of slides so I can play a video for you guys. I don't know if I'll be able to. Yeah, I think I'll be able to, sure. So the links. I want to talk about the misconceptions, the stigmas, and downplaying of substance abuse and GBV is the blur. That's where the issue is, because there was a moment of time when I'm sitting with other recovering addicts, because I do a lot of work in the community and speak to either young men or young women who are going through this thing, or have put up their hand and say, look, I need help, you know. The stigmas that are surrounded by the drugs, or how easy it is for them to get into smoking, is when someone is going, oh man, let's go high and stress. And no, man, just roll up something and relax. We don't understand what happens to the mind. Another misconception, which is something that caused my brother just a lot. I like telling stories actually. And one of the examples here is my brother, is my little brother. He was in high school and he was with this group of his friends, and they decided to roll a joint. A joint is, marijuana, just to smoke a little bit, whatever they wanted to do. They're kids. He didn't know that he had an underlying issue. He then had what we call substance-induced mental psychosis. From being in a private school, you had to be rushed to a rehab. My mother didn't understand what was going on here. Now, this happens, she doesn't know that her firstborn son is an addict himself, but she can tell that something is wrong with this boy. Maybe she had an idea that he went through something like this. Now, my brother goes through rehab. My mom is traumatized. The whole family system is now in shambles. She almost got bankrupt trying to put him through treatment. He comes back from treatment. The misconceptions are still there, that this is just, marijuana is just, it's a plant, come on, And some of these things are experimental, can get in and get out. Maybe the bad example was me, because he saw me getting in and out of these things and nothing ain't really happening to me. He had another moment where he had a relapse, because he still thought I can go out and have a drink. He had a drink. He had underlying issues. I had to come back home and stay with him for 4 months and help him rehabilitate himself back into society. I see a lot of experts coming in to speak about these things, which is really good. A lot of information is crucial, but you must not overlook someone perhaps like myself, and the next speaker is going to come after me, someone who has gone through the darkness and is able to come out of it, not only just come out of it, but come out of it and bring something back to say, look, this is how we should do it or should not do it. This is why I'm standing here. This is why I was invited even to be here, because through my cycling, through finding my own solution and refusing any other way. So we fail to see a distinction between the two, yet we treat them as one. When you are stressed out and feeling somehow, girl is going to have a drink. Nothing wrong in having a drink. But who are you having a drink with? What state of mind is that person in? The only time I then began to start getting help was when those drugs were removed out of me. Put the drugs one side, then we left with who now? Mfana wami. We left with Lunga. Now what's the problem, Lunga? The first one was my identity. Who am I? So right abuse is a personal movement that links everything as one. That's why we say right abuse. Abuse stops with me. Not just me, Lunga, or me, Itumeleng, or anyone else, but all of us. Where you are, abuse should not happen. And through our programs, his identity, this is the map actually that I cycled in 2018. And since 2015, I've been doing this thing unassisted, unsupported, by government or any private companies. Well, yes, there are small businesses. Let me correct myself. There are small businesses that have supported along the way. I was asked this question, why? Why couldn't you just organize something like this and have a conference and speak with people in a workshop? It's because we're dealing with an issue that faces people, and it hits them in a way that sometimes is hard to explain. When I cycled into Eastern Cape, a gentleman just couldn't stop sobbing and crying. But I'm like, why are you crying and sobbing to me? I just arrived here. He says that because you took this ridiculously crazy idea of leaving Johannesburg on your bicycle and you come here and you've arrived here, I now believe I can also come out of where I'm in and start doing the right things to get to where I need to get to. There's so many stories I can share with you guys of people, the men I've met, the private groups that they have on Facebook because they cannot speak in a place like this, because they are going to be called this and that. I'm not just defending these people. No, I'm not. I am saying that there is a solution, and it begins here with people like us in this room, or someone as crazy as I am can cycle across Africa so I can reach the outskirts, because these campaigns, they all end up in Johannesburg or the big metropolitan cities. There's no hashtag campaign is Laleni. That's where I went. For 10 days, you can even ask Itumeleng, he couldn't even reach me on the phone. For 10 days, I was that side, and I was walking, hiking, cycling. Some places I couldn't cycle, and I had a few injuries. But when I walked through there and they asked me, man, first of all, you must be crazy. All you have is a backpack. There's something remarkable about the spirit of a human being. And once we can tap into that spirit of a human being and allow it to naturally evolve and unwrap itself, it is able to heal itself and heal others, and also solve the economic problem we were talking about earlier. I think some of the people were talking about earlier on, and I think our host was mentioning it too, that if you can solve the poverty issue, we can then find a solution. But I hope I was able to kind of show you the link between gender-based violence and I hope that's not too explicit. Can I go back to it? Okay. We're dealing with a serious issue, guys. I even got naked for my cause, man. I got naked for what I believe in. So, sorry, I've never put this in such a big screen before. So it just took me. So this showing your vulnerability does not magically shrink your manhood. It's not weakness to speak out, man. Vulnerability is power. I had to learn this earlier on. I said that I was a victim and then I became an abuser. I was a victim at a young age when I couldn't even speak for myself. And we kind of grew up saying it's okay for fathers not to be there. No, that's not okay. And then later on, the abuse kind of metamorphosized itself and transformed itself into many different ways, because I was not vulnerable enough to face my own issues. Once I was vulnerable enough to say, I put up my hand, I'm like, I am powerless. That's when something else came in and took over. Once I picked up my hand and say, I don't understand this, or I can't do this, or I should not be doing this, that is when I was able to start opening up and start speaking about certain things that were harming me, which led me to find something else. Because what it all is substance is just an escape. Sometimes you just want to switch off. The world has just been too hectic for today. Too many tweets and updates, hashtags and so on. You just want to take a moment to unwind. I teach alternative methods. I teach different ways and how we can then start tapping into who we really and truly are. That's why the program, His Identity, is something that we're pushing. And that's why collaborating and working with other nonprofit organizations and state-run entities and private businesses is essential for us. And that's why this is the last ride, I teamed up with Word in the Streets, because we need to be able to come together and find a solution. I think the other speaker was very right when they said that policing is not the only solution or the solution that can help. I believe in the heart of mankind, and that is why I've dedicated myself not just myself, but my entire self, physically. On the 27th of April, I'm going to be attempting to break a world record of cycling the most kilometers in one day, in 24 hours. The current world record holder is an Australian man. He cycled 577 kilometers in one day. I hope to cycle from Polokwane to KZN in one day. Yeah, my body's saying the same thing. Why am I doing this crazy, ridiculous thing? Is one, I believe in the heart of mankind, and believe in that you are able to transform your life and change your life from bad to good. That's why I'm doing it, and I'm also doing it to raise money so we can build a rehab. We can build a rehab. Why do we want to build a rehab? Because it was so hard for me to get into a rehabilitation center when I needed help. I remember I was on the phone crying, I was suicidal, I needed help, I had no one and nothing, and I spent hours online Googling. I called, every place I called wanted money, or they wanted this, they wanted that I couldn't give or have, until I got a place by the grace of God so that I can be here and speak and hopefully tap into the hearts of people who can be able to meet up with me and we can help each other get forward. So I want to build one. Where I'm from, Mlazi, and here where I'm staying in Gauteng, there are some rehab centers, but azikho that give the kind of solutions that I believe can help. But others are there to make money. Look, yeah, sure, you need to make money, but let not profit be what drives the agenda. This is why I want to build a rehab center. I want to build a wellness village, because if we are able to give an environment where we can teach young men and women the art of meditating and tapping into themselves and finding the power within, we can be able to create a better future. I don't know, but in terms of time, I'd like to play a video clip, and I think that will be the end and the close of my share for today.
Santse re wa madume ebile re wa moela ka diatla tse mofuthu ka mehla ka bomontaha ka nako ena ke nako ya leihlo la setjhaba mona ho SABC2 nna lebitso la ka ke Palesa Chubisi. Ho hlekefetswa ha basadi le bana ke bothata bo boholo bo jametseng naha. Bothata bona bo hloka hore setjhaba kaofela se fumane tharollo. Ka jeno re lekola letsholo le bitswang Right Abuse le qadilweng ke Lunga Ncala bakeng sa ho lwantsha tlhekefetso ya basadi le bana. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us on Leihlo la Setjhaba. Tonight we bring you a life-changing campaign that's aimed at fighting women and children abuse.
Ho otlwa, dipolao, ho betwa, le ho thefulwa maikutlo, tsena ke tsela tseo basadi le bana ba hlekefetswang ka tsona. Sena se etsahala mahaeng, dikolong, mesebetsing le mebileng. Ngwana a le mong ho ba bararo mona Afrika Borwa o hlekefetswa ka motabo pele a fihla dilemong tse 16. Banna bana ba babedi ba tlilo jaha dibaesekele matsatsi a 30 mona Afrika Borwa, Lesotho, Eswatini le Mozambique. Pheletsong ya leeto ba tla be ba jahile dikilomitara tse 2,000. Tsohle tsena ka sepheo le morero wa ho lwantshana le ho hlekefetswa ha basadi le bana.
Abuse has taken over us as a society in a huge way.
I was ashamed of what society might say about me.
Are contributed to abuse in different ways. Sometimes we know it, sometimes we don't.
I was really touched about, abuse and just gender-based violence.
Afrika Borwa ke enngwe ya dinaha tse nang le palo e phahameng haholo ya ho hlekefetswa ha basadi le bana. Mosadi a le mong ho ba bahlano mona Afrika Borwa wa otlwa. Sena sena le ditlamorao tse mpe setjhabeng. Ke eng se tshwanetseng ho etswa ho fedisa tlhekefetso? Mabidi ana a kgathetseng a dibaesekele a pheta pale e bohloko ya tlhekefetso. A tsamaile a kgesemela mebileng le dilomong dibakeng tsa mahae le ditoropong. Bapalami ke Lunga Ncala e leng mothehi wa Riot Abuse mmoho le motswalle wa hae Ronald.
Abuse is a problem e re boneng gore inyaka rena banna re eme ka maoto re lwe le yona. That's re are thoma o cyclisha in 2015 in PE. Tšere nyaka gore re fe batho an answer to a question ya gore ke nna mang after ke tswile gara an abusive environment.
O ka labalabela go tlolla letsoho o thusa ba hlokang, empa ha o hloka tshehetso ya ditjhelete ho a nyolosetsa.
Ke thomile ka se ke nang le sona. Then ka thoma o cyclisha ke bereka le community ya ko Port Elizabeth. O thusha basadi who are escaping from an abusive home. Ba tšhaba bošego, and then ba kry-a ba nyaka kry-a halfway house. So mola ntse ba tlhoka di-pads, ba tlhoka di-toiletries, so ra ba thusha ka yona until re ba fe a platform and a voice.
Marangrang a technology a bapetse tema ya bohlokwa ho tsebahatsa mosebetsi o etswang ke Riot Abuse. Re fumane seo ha re kopana le Eugene Musi ya una molemo letsholong lena.
I saw on social media Riot Abuse. I followed the page and came to see what's going on with the organization and the initiative behind it. So after following them, I decided to come out and report the abuse. And that was the first time I've ever even told my family that I was in an abusive relationship.
Hangata re utlwa batho ba hlekefetsang ba re ketso tsa bona di susumetswa ke hore le bona ba ile ba hlekefetswa. Empa Lunga o kgethile ho fetola bohloko ba hae thuso ho ba bang.
I was mistreated in various forms, emotional abuse, to some extent sometimes financial, and now I must go through my own depression.
Selo seo ke karolo ya tharollo.
Today I call myself a survivor because of Riot Abuse. They've been doing follow-ups on how I've been coping ever since I opened the case. The guy is still behind bars. I would love to share my story with the world and also thank Riot Abuse for being there for us. Not only me, but all the survivors who've been through abuse.
Selemo le selemo Afrika Borwa e nka karolo letsholong la 16 days of activism. Letsholo lena le kgahlano.
Let us have another presentation.
In closing, I want to say that all that you see there, you can even see the bicycles we're using there. We didn't have any funding, any money. We just used what we have to cycle and get there. Most of the time, we didn't even have money to eat anything on the road. But we made it through because the message is more important than anything else. Thank you for your time. God bless.